What's up everyone, it's Showtime, it is the Blazer King with King's Critiques, and we're here for something I meant to do earlier in the month, but first off, I am of course a supporter of the LGBTQ plus etc, hence, the video and comments I make on occasion that aren't passe. However, it'd be uncomfortable to make comments based on all aspects, so I apologize. For this video, I'll be taking note of my favorite aspect of it with anime, Yuri, because it's a very wholesome thing a majority of the time. Now, I'm not going to talk about just characters where it's all action and no plot to their relationship. In fact, I'm going to run down from the very beginning of anime involving such characters for whatever anime I'm aware of, to any degree anyway. First off, we have the 80s and 90s, and while there's a lot of anime I wasn't aware of at all on this list, and others I wouldn't mind watching, like Utena, there's still a few I grew up on, starting with Cardcaptor Sakura, and ignoring the obvious reason for this one starting. There's also notably a gay couple within the show, because it's actually funny that Sakura's love interest was not on that side the whole time. Only to find that out all these years later. But being as it was directed towards kids, we couldn't really be aware of it that early. However, we were given a look into girl love a little bit. Tomoya Daidoji, I know that's not 100% correct, but it's close enough, did admit her feelings to the main protagonist, but typical main character energy, she didn't quite get it, and again, as kids, we weren't meant to either. But next to mention show-wise would be Maya Ibuki from Evangelion, who over time seemingly fell in love with Ritsuko, who a lot of us probably did, honestly, into women or otherwise. She was just mostly respectable. Kind of lost that a little bit later on, but I'm over-explaining again. Then we go back to Magical Girls with an of-age couple. I think they were college-age at least. Michiru Kaio and Haruko Tenno, aka Sailor Neptune and Sailor Uranus, aka cousins. 4 kids, am I right? Speaking of Sailor Moon, we also have Sayako, who, while a girl and a lesbian, is also a Sailor Starfighter. A boy, so would technically be trans? Kind of like Camphor and stuff like that, I guess. There's also a Magical Girl show like that I think I forgot to put on this list, but if so, my bad. But those will probably be mentioned later. Point is, she's in love with Usagi, who, of course, is in love with Mamoru, aka Damien for the dub watchers, of the original at least. Honorable mention to Ayako Yuki, who I never finished Variable Geo, but I started it, and I need to get back into watching it, because I did hear it was a good show from one of my older friends who don't really talk to a lot. But now, we get into the 2000s, which, with the Wikipedia thing I'm looking at, mentions cartoons too. So, just because I did love the show, honorable mention to Bunny and Kitty from that one episode of Courage, where Kitty escaped her abusive boyfriend dog. Speaking of shows I watched when I was younger, Kanon and Maria Osawa from the former self-titled show. I don't remember a lot about it, but the two did travel together throughout the series, of course. I don't remember a lot about the series, but the two did travel together, and Ken playing the hero every time, of course. But it's one of those bittersweet relationships, staying together forever, or at least as long as forever is for them, because, well, Kanon's a special case. Never finished Code Geass either, but notable mention to Nia Einstein for reasons most who did watch the show would understand. Now, step into the world of shonen with Soifon from Bleach, who has tendencies of tsundere, as well as a little bit of yandere, while also having a longing love for Yoruichi that she really does not bother to hide, especially in that one Christmas filler episode, which, like Ritsuko earlier, who can blame her? Stumbling back into the not as well known Shizuru Fujino from My Hime, who fell for Natsuki Kuga, and by the end of the show, did accept her feelings once known after fighting and people dying and other love triangle-y type stuff. Tomoe Marget was also in love with Shizuru, but clearly that didn't work out so well. From action to comedy, however, Kaori from Asamaga Daioh is in love with Sakaki. Not a ton to say about the show other than it's a crazy mess of comedy. There's some things that track between the episodes well enough, clearly. Like, friendships and romance interests. But small note to the girl-loving yandere from Kanon, the Yankee, going back to that, because this list really did not have a good way of separating itself, did it? Who tried to step up to the protagonist but fell just a bit short. Back on cartoons, though, shout out to minor characters from Ben 10, Rojo and Azul, lesbian bikers. And now back on the topic from earlier involving technically trans characters from Camp Fur. Never finished it. Do need to go back to at some point, but well, I mentioned Kaede Sakura, who was in love with the main character's transformed self. Would she have liked the guy half as well? Well, maybe that's a manga thing that was explained. I'll never know. I'm not much of a reader, plus it's hard to find manga sometimes. Over-explaining. Small call to Shiori Suzuki from Witchblade, which was a fun watch, but this character went a little bit extra mental. Getting into the 2010s, first characters I see are from Citrus, which I did a full review of that anime, so you should go check that out sometime. Probably they'll be linked down below and definitely at the card at the end of this. Never finished Yuri, but I also didn't realize I had like 4 seasons to it until a year or 2 ago. So just a quick mention when I see the names. Firstly, Akane Akazaka, who's a siscon, not to as many weird levels as some shows, but the feeling is definitely there. We have our first mention of Ruby, finally, with the first woman to be obviously gay, Ilia, who is, well, obviously in love with Blake. Because she was obviously willing to do anything to get Blake back to the menagerie. So, but that also might be reading a bit too much into stuff outside. Actually, did the creators say she would? Whatever. She's on the list, so she was marked down. I'll get to the ones who weren't on the list who I feel need to be mentioned later. But there were a few lesbians in Ruby, and whether they were mentioned or not, another good comedy and action show that expresses the feelings, but doesn't really show much as far as the intended relationship, is Flip Flappers, where Kokona is in love with Paprika, not sure how to handle the budding feelings throughout the show, but eventually, after a bunch of crazy and wacky adventures, which the show is really good, don't get me wrong. They just went here, there, and everywhere with, what the plot was intending to be, outside of their relationship growing, obviously. Speaking of the first of many lesbians within a show, Nue Harumi from Kill la Kill was one of the opponents Ryoko fought within the series, gave her quite the smooch to be complimented by the former antagonist, which I don't recall that as well. Maybe I should give that a rewatch sometime. It was a good show, though. And if you haven't seen it, go watch it. If you don't mind the excessive ecchi of things, at the minimum, that's definitely a good show to check out. Minus the whole Ragyu Satsuki thing. Which I guess that would technically be counted for this list, huh? Back to Yuri, however, a mention of the Ikeda sisters, who both got their glasses fogged up and bloody noses whenever thinking about a couple of girls together, especially Ayano and Kyuko, which Chitose, when influenced, also tends to ambush her friends with kisses. Which, I mean, I guess definitely could be worse than just some smooching, right? Katsuragi from Senran Kagura is on here, and she at least is definitely, in that way, out of all the girls so far that have not been mentioned, because she's always groping her teammates with surprise attacks, similar to Katsuragi, and, in the similar body style too, is Mio Kusagi from Keijo, who also like to grope her friends quite often, and we're not even going to talk about the one girl who massaged people to gain their abilities, specifically massaging their buttocks. And apparently Aang's daughter from Avatar is a lesbian. Didn't know that one. But interesting information to have. I mean, obviously, we have to mention Katara and Asami early on, who both started as, straight and for the same guy, and then eventually started to develop their own thing, and, closed off the series walking into the Light of the Spirit realm, which I ain't finished the show yet, but that's how it is, and Aang's daughter was mentioned as such in the comic series, apparently. But speaking of, obviously canonic Yuri couples, one way or the other, Sakura Trick, who first mentioned is surprisingly not the main couple of the show. It's Shizuku Minami, who is in a relationship with Katona Nodo. Wikipedia needs to get these bears sorted, because now we're back for a quick mention of Nadeshiko Omura from Yuri. Details are limited, but small mention. Details are limited for her, unfortunately, but small mention stepping to another show, real quick, because Ruru of Kisniver, who was in love with Hanukkah, but that didn't last long, unfortunately. And from what I remember reading, neither did Hanukkah. Back to another Yuri couple that's canonic within Ruby. is Saffron and her wife Tara, John's sister being the former, obviously. I say obviously like it's a thing people should know. If you haven't seen Ruby yet, maybe let's check it out. Ice Queen is also a good one, so if you're not going to check out the actual. We didn't see much of Saffron and Tara, unfortunately, but was the second glimpse into the LGBT world into the series. Small note to that, actually, they did have an adopted son, or maybe not adoptive. We don't quite know the rule on that stuff within Ruby, do we? Bento was another random but decent show, which we have something to mention here, from Umeshiro Ume, who was obsessed with Hana and beat up the main character frequently, despite flirting with others. One of which is one of the main characters, and the other being a siscon over time. Don't read too much into that. Luckily, the show, from what I remember, didn't read too much into it either. Manga might have, but show didn't. Ayano from Yuri Yuri is gay like the sisters think, but tsundere stuff, can't admit her true feelings for Kyoko. As for Yu Sanada, she's in a committed relationship with Haruka Takayama. And fun fact, Sakura Trick is the first anime I watched that had consistent Yuri relationship stuff going on. Yes, that means the obvious, but first time I watched it when I was like 15. Sue me. Would the timeline track for that? Maybe I was a couple of years older. Whatever. Here's another fun one. Toru from Dragon Maid, who is in love with Kobayashi, doesn't really reciprocate that level of love yet. But she has the balls, and that, I mean metaphorically, of course, but there was the one episode where it was meant quite literally, thanks to Ilulu. To argue with the dragon's father, so that's gotta say something, right? Back to the shonen bits. With the couple that unfortunately didn't get to have as much life with one another was Ymir and Historia. Sadly, Ymir sacrificed herself throughout the series at one point and did not make it back from it in order to live that life with Historia, who did breed with Eren to continue the future of that bloodline, as regretful as that might have ended up. Now, there are some things that weren't mentioned, it seems, and at the least, canonically, Homura from Madoka Magica was a canon lesbian, because she did admit to loving Madoka and did everything she could to stop her from becoming a magical girl, which was exposed more at movie Rebellion, but played a weird twist of fate on her, as sad as that is. And now finally, within this last few years, we have some mentions that I actually did watch the shows of. Some obviously I need to go and watch myself, but we're starting with Yuffie and Anisphia from Magical Girl Revolution. The title is too long to remember all of. Which was also a show we covered here on the title, not in the current recording style we do now, but if we get another season of it, we definitely will. But even if it's not the best style, should go check out a couple of the episodes. We have some fun discussions over there. But I do love revisiting this show, because starting from rescuing Yuffie from the humiliation at the hands of Anis's brother, aka Yuffie's fiance, to defeating her own brother, and many other challenges throughout the series leading up to that point, Yuffie eventually accepted Anis's feelings, as well as discovering her own, taking the initiative the first chance she got. It was all really history from there for them. Now, speaking of shows I covered, Momo from Executioner and Her Way of Life. She was the assistant to Menno, the main character, and was in love with her, but as often happens, lost out to the growing relationship between Menno and Akari, who fell for Menno pretty hard at that, and despite the protagonist's need to kill Akari, couldn't help feel things for her over time as well. Now we get on to the ones that weren't mentioned, but I do recall being either in love with another girl in lesser detail, starting with ones that weren't mentioned, but I do recall being in love with another girl in lesser detail, starting with Akebi from Akebi's sailor outfit, who seemed to have developed feelings for Erika, which may or may not have been reciprocated, but they did seem to be, very good friends at times throughout the series. But next, actually to mention, is another one of my favorite shows of all time, Akuma no Riddle, which has two canon couples, at least. I think there's a third between the president of the school and her assistant, but I think that's a one-sided love. Could be wrong. But we're going to start with Takaku and Haru, who are the main character and the main target for this school of assassins. They only had one kiss shared, but it was to save Haru's... Takaku was the one in trouble. To save her life, and it seemed like they were pretty close after that, more so than beforehand. But also mentioned from the same show was Shitoro and Hitsugi, who didn't really reveal their feelings completely until they were defeated by Takaku. But hey, at least they got there eventually, right? They got to enjoy the OVA together as they should. Another show we covered was Birdie Wing Golf, who, while we never saw anything actually happen between them, Evangelion and Aoi had a thing for each other, and Aoi did even ask to be kissed multiple times by Eva, who turned her down up until she made a bet with her, and while we didn't get to see it actively happen, we know it probably did in the very finale of season 2. But there was also a few other girls who seemed to be into classmates or teammates in such a way, whether it was made known or not. A couple of the girls were even kind of smitten with Ava after, showing off her skills. Another show we cover on the channel, 3 in a row here. Unfortunately, we didn't get to finish season 2, but I will do that eventually and probably write the script for it. Was Dead Mount Death Play, where Masaki and Seo spent one moment in the shower together and seem to have been closer ever since. That's a good way to tame your serial killers. Legally, a joke. There is a pair from Durarara who shared that Pocky game scene. The one you've probably seen a time or two. I am gonna regrettably give a quick mention to Chloe from Fate, but that's not gonna be delving too much deeper into that because of the ambiguity of, how the Fate timeline is set up. On topic of morally questionable ways for Yuri to go, however, another quick mention to Happy Sugar Life. Again, if you know, you know. Mary and the new protagonist from Kakegurui Twin, which the original did have a lot of shipping, I won't get that wrong. Mary and Yumeko kinda were a heavy ship for people. But this was a bit more obvious with how the new girl was into Mary. Now, we're gonna step back into the, camp furry, sailor, scout kind of thing of girl meets girl, who had the main character get rejected by the main girl and wish upon a star to be able to, I don't remember the details, probably something about, being able to connect with her better, and, became a girl. Throughout the series, they got along and eventually got married. Main character never got to get back to a boy, but he was perfectly fine with being with the one he loves. From Komi Can't Communicate, Yamai, obviously, is deeply in love with Komi and not too happy about Tano's relationship with her. Another one we cover them calling us canon by the ending is Chisato and Takina, who, despite their issues, still saved each other multiple times. And, well, come on, that beach scene at the end of the season, clearly they had a thing going on. And we're getting season 2 at some point, so maybe they'll expand more on that. A small mention to Natsuzo Trap, because, the letters in there speak for themselves. Because there was canon lesbians. The Yuri relationship between them was a thing, but there was also a lot of bisexual conflict happening. And while there was a lot of shipping, Ko and Rin were assumed to be canon by the end of Season 2 of New Game, and, well, apparently the manga further made that known as canon, mentioning that they were married in a very low-key way. Psycho no Quasar, while I never finished it, did have at least one Yuri couple within it. Don't remember the characters exactly, maybe I'll look them up on my anime list and pop them up while I'm rambling right now, but there was at least one definitely Yuri couple and not a I need a quick fix thing happening. And if you don't know the show, it is for definitely mature audiences. Another one that I'm not sure if I covered, but I definitely checked out and ran over quickly in one of my first videos was Izetta the Last Witch, which Izetta was in love with the Princess Fine throughout pretty much the entire thing, but Fine was more so in it to have Izetta help make sure her plans went in motion, and they weren't really even a couple until the end of war time skip that happened. Another M-rated show that I log into the mobile game for at least is Seven Mortal Sins, and that had plenty of Yuri going on, whether it be high-key or low-key. Slime 300, I do remember Azusa, one of the girls she ended up having joined her, family was in love with her, because I'm pretty sure she considered herself the wife of the family, honestly. A short one, but a sweet one, was Sono Hanabira. It was originally a visual novel, but they made a short anime out of it. As I recall, it was like 4 episodes maybe, but that's enough said considering they were more to the point about a lot of things. Similar to how Kakegurui went, that was mentioned a bit ago, we have a couple of other spin-off things that had a more Yuri flavor to them, starting off the mentions with Soul Eater Nut. It involved a Meister still trying to find her weapon in Segumi, and 2 ladies who want nothing more than to take that role in Meme and Anya. I don't remember what their weapons were, but it did have quite a bit of fun stuff going on, including the Snake Sisters returning in full force, and those weapons definitely coming to use. As I recall, she used both of them, kind of dual-wielded, and that's how they ended off. Maybe we'll get a season 2 of that one day. But what we are getting a season 2 of is Sword Art Online Gun Gale Online, which features Karen. That's really a hated name right now, isn't it? But I also could be reading it wrong, and if I am, I do apologize for not remembering that, or the Japanese name. This is just the name that was marked down. She was trying to break into the world of Gun Gale, and met a lot of cool people, including one who turned out to be her greatest rival, but also a potential crush. And honestly, she definitely has feelings for her both in-game and reality, since they had met at one point. Unless I'm remembering some of those details wrong, which has been a couple of years since I saw it, at least. I think I skipped over the couple from Psycho-Pass while typing this out, honestly, including the doctor and her assistants. So if I did that, I do apologize. I could go on a shipping tangent, but whether this be 1 or 2 videos, the script is pretty long as it is. And while it was also kind of short about a lot of the couples mentioned, not sure if I'm going to include pictures for them or not. We shall see. Hell, maybe I'll leave it up to you guys if I re-upload it with the pictures. But one more mention, of course, is a couple that, despite the love-hate reaction after it broke Twitter, is Blake and Yang from RWBY. And while the series life is up in the air right now between what's going on with Rooster Teeth and Warner Brothers and all that other stuff, we won't forget that moment with all the good, bad, and memes that come from it. Now, if you want me to look deeper into other, trans or yaoi characters, I can cover that too at some point, whether it be within the next week of the month or next year or whatever. Because, there is a lot more than what I did mention here. There are a lot of ships from shows that I could bring up, and plenty more from all the shows that we watch that are just on cute girls doing cute things. Whatever direction it goes, let me know down below, and happy Pride Month, everybody. Regardless of what you are, whether it be straight, bi, yuri, yaoi, whatever. Be you, enjoy who you are, just don't be an asshole about it. And that said, it has been the Blazer King with King's Critiques, reminding you that speaking of supporting, don't forget, hit like, subscribe to the gaming channel, the description down below. We play a lot of games over there that also have, Yuri, yaoi, etc. shipping potential. Ring both bells like Facebook Filter to keep updated with things. TikTok, Patreon, where, you get the full unedited videos that I do here. Visuals, because, YouTube is kind of a poopy butthole about a lot of audio stuff. I was just playing Glitch is music in the background while doing all this talking, because she doesn't mind people using her stuff for content, so I highly appreciate her because of that. And of course, go follow on Twitch, subscribe for benefits. You can do so with Twitch Prime for free, and it helps me out a lot more than subscribing over here. That being said, it's been the Blazer King with King's Critiques. Out, ta-ta for now.